I knew from a very early age, when my parents and aunt, they would tell the story. They would say, okay, so-and-so has been murdered over here, and this is what happened to this family, and this family did this. And so I always knew.
Margie Burkhardt finds peace and strength during her visits to Gray Horse Cemetery in northern Oklahoma. It's the final resting place for several Osage family members, including her grandmother Molly. Notably missing here, Ernest Burkhardt, her grandfather. For nearly a century, the story of Molly and Ernest Burkhardt and the deaths that surrounded her family was buried deep beneath the hollowed tribal land of the Osage people. A love story which ended in a murderous plot. That love story, one of the arcs of David Grant's best-selling book, Killers of the Flower Moon, one that inspired a movie of the same name, directed by Martin Scorsese, which shines a light on the reign of terror that struck the Osage tribe in the early 20th century. Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone play Margie's grandparents. Native film star Gladstone learned to speak Osage during her role.
Shomikasi. That's how you are.
I don't know what you said, but it must have been Indian for handsome devil.
I want to make sure the story is told accurately. That was a concern, that there would be some distortion to the facts.
Her home and the surrounding area transformed as Scorsese's team worked with locals to bring their rich culture to the big screen. In the late 1800s, the Osage were forced off their lands by white settlers, ending up in what is now northern Oklahoma. At the time, the land was rocky, undeveloped, and undesirable. But around 1920, oil was found on the reservation, a lot of oil.
This became the oil capital of the world.
Almost overnight, Osage families like Margie's became rich, some of the wealthiest people in the world, including the great-grandfather of James Gray, a former Osage chief.
It was making national news how much wealth they were generating and what they were doing with it.
Killers of the Flower Moon focuses on the mysterious deaths of several of those affluent Osage Indians. Both James and Margie's families were targeted by the violence.
You mentioned your great-grandfather was also a victim, so you have a personal connection to this.
It couldn't be more personal, yeah. Once it became abundantly clear that nobody was investigating all the mysterious deaths that were going on, they appealed to the tribal council to petition the United States to do something about it.
Eventually, federal investigators stepped in and uncovered a larger conspiracy among non-native locals to take advantage of the Osage families and usurp their fortunes.
We weren't supposed to be wealthy, and something had to be done about it.
All of this enabled by an oppressive policy imposed on the newly rich Osage.
Half-blood or more were automatically declared non-competent, incapable of conducting business without a white guardian approving any transaction.
What did that do to the tribe?
Well, it put the fox in charge of the hen house is what it did. And so the guardian program created an economic incentive that if this individual were to die, you could marry into this family and inherit their wealth.
Hence the reign of terror.
Exactly.
Gray was chief of the Osage Nation from 2002 to 2010. His focus, in part, was to honor the tribe's tumultuous past by revitalizing the tribe's focus on the future.
Well, we had to get the internal house in order for us to establish the kind of reforms that I knew the nation and the people of the Osage Nation wanted.
Part of Gray's plan included buying back land that was originally part of the Osage Nation and reinvesting in their communities and culture.
We opened 7 casinos, and we poured all of that money into education, higher education, healthcare, cultural preservation, language preservation.
When word got out the movie rights had been sold, Gray was committed to making sure the real story of the Osage people wasn't whitewashed.
When Scorsese decided to accept our invitation and come to meet with the Gray Horse residents in the Osage Nation, I think was unexpected. We fed him, we sat down, we visited.
Did Scorsese listen?
Yeah, he did. He jumped out of his chair and he shook my hand, he thanked me. And he said he was going to take some time to work on the script right then and there.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else.
Well, there was some concerns with some of the community members.
Okay.
That they thought this was a Scorsese film and it was going to be gory and like a shoot-'em-up film.
Margie was also consulted by the legendary filmmaker.
He said he would be sensitive.
You also had a sit-down conversation with Leonardo DiCaprio. Please tell me you got excited for that.
Maybe a little.
Okay. What was that conversation like for you?
He was real respectful. He had some questions on Molly and Ernest's relationship. You know, Molly, she loved her husband and she wanted to believe him. He was like, well, how could you love somebody and do this to them?
Ernest Burkhardt, Margie's grandfather, pled guilty to murder, one member of a much broader conspiracy masterminded by De Niro's character.
It just looks like murder. It's not supposed to be that way.
That killed an estimated 60 Osage by explosion, poison, and gunshots in order to get their hands on the oil money. More than 100 years after the Reign of Terror, Margie continues to wrestle with her family's and community's complicated history.
Was there ever a point where you said, there's a lot of baggage here, right?
It happened to my family. You can't run away from anything like that. You just have to own it, I guess.
Both Margie and Gray were invited to advance screenings. After decades of struggling with how their people have been portrayed, both agree their culture has finally come into clearer focus.
Did the movie get it right?
Back in the old days, they would miss the Indian point of view in a movie by a mile.
Right.
Now they're missing it by feet. The industry's moving closer to allowing indigenous people to tell their stories. And I think Scorsese has really set a new bar.
I saw the movie twice.
Was it hard to watch?
The first time it was pretty emotional. I mean, just because, you know, you see your grandmother on screen and you see your grandfather on screen.
What is the legacy then of the Burkhardt name?
Persevering for Molly and her sisters and for my children.
To any Osage that knows their culture, to watch this film, seeing it visibly pop on the screen, it's enormously powerful.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.